Have you ever met someone who felt like they were meant to be in your life? Someone who, with just one look, makes everything else disappear. For Derek, it was her. One moment in a coffee shop changed everything. He couldn't explain it, but he knew he had to get closer. Derek wasn't just any man. He was an alpha, strong, confident, and respected by his pack. But even he wasn't prepared for the pull he felt toward her. She was different. Healing from her own losses, trying to start over, she wasn't looking for love. Yet, every time they crossed paths, there was something she couldn't ignore. But love is never simple. The more they were drawn to each other, the more the world seemed to push back. Danger was closing in, a force ready to disrupt everything. It was tied to her past, a past she didn't ask for but couldn't escape. And Derek, he had to decide, follow her or chase something new and uncharted. Could he risk stepping away from everything he knew for something he couldn't explain? What would you do if the person you couldn't stay away from was the one the world seemed determined to keep from you? This is the story of fate, love, and the battles we fight to hold on to what matters most. But who will win? And at what cost? Chapter 1. Being an alpha wasn't just a title for Derek. It was a way of life. Every decision, every action, every step he took affected not just him but his entire pack. And for the most part he thrived in that role. He had strength, respect, and a natural charisma that made people follow him without question. But deep down there were cracks. Small ones he rarely let anyone see. Nights were often the hardest. When the moon rose high in the sky, bathing the forest in its silvery light, Derek would sometimes find himself walking alone, his thoughts louder than the rustle of leaves in the wind. He would think about the future of his pack, about the responsibilities that seemed to grow heavier with each passing day. And though he never said it out loud, there was a lingering emptiness in him, a longing for something he couldn't quite name. "Derek," a familiar voice called out, pulling him from his thoughts one evening. It was James, his oldest friend and the only human who knew his secret. James jogged up, slightly out of breath. "You've got that look again. The brooding, I'm the big bad alpha look. What's on your mind?" Derek smirked, shaking his head. "Nothing I can't handle. Just thinking." "Thinking about what?" James pressed, crossing his arms. "The pack. The full moon. Or maybe that hole in your life you pretend isn't there." Derek shot him a warning look. But James wasn't intimidated. He never was. "Relax," James said, grinning. "I'm just saying maybe you need a break. Go out, meet someone, enjoy yourself for once. You're always so serious." Derek laughed, a deep, rich sound that echoed through the trees. "You've been saying that for years, James. And I've told you, I don't have time for distractions." James shrugged. "One day you're going to run into someone who changes everything. Mark my words." Derek brushed it off, but the words stuck with him. He couldn't imagine his life changing. Not with the way things were now. But James had a way of being annoyingly right about things. The morning sun filtered through the blinds of Derek's room, casting streaks of gold across the wooden floor. His alarm buzzed faintly, but he was already awake, lying still in bed, staring at the ceiling. Mornings were always the calm before the storm, a rare moment of quiet in his otherwise chaotic life. Derek stretched, rolling out of bed with a groan. His muscles ached from yesterday's rugby practice, and he could already feel the weight of the day ahead. College classes, pack meetings, rugby practice, and whatever else life decided to throw at him. Being an alpha meant there was no such thing as a slow day. Derek's first stop was the university campus, where he was pursuing a degree in business administration. Not because he needed it. His pack's resources were more than enough to sustain them, but because it gave him a sense of normalcy. College was a place where he could blend in, where he wasn't just the alpha but a regular student. He walked into his first lecture of the day. His usual seat in the back corner waiting for him. The professor droned on about supply chains and market strategies, but Derek's mind was elsewhere. He tapped his pen against his notebook, his thoughts drifting to the responsibilities waiting for him after class. Earth to Derek, came a voice from his left. He turned to see James grinning at him. His usual carefree attitude a stark contrast to Derek's brooding demeanor. "You look like you're planning world domination," James teased, leaning back in his chair. Derek smirked. "Just thinking about the day ahead." James raised an eyebrow. "You mean the 10 things you have to do before noon? When do you ever catch a break?" Derek didn't answer. The truth was, he didn't know how to take a break. Being an alpha meant always being on, always being ready. But he appreciated James' attempts to keep things light. It was one of the reasons they were such good friends. After his last class, Derek headed to the pack house. Nestled deep in the forest, the sprawling wooden structure served as the heart of their community. It was where decisions were made, where disputes were settled, and where Derek's role as alpha truly came into play. The room was already buzzing with activity when he arrived. His betas, Lucas, the strategist, and Sarah, the enforcer, were seated at the long table, discussing the upcoming territory patrols. Finally, Lucas said as Derek entered, his voice tinged with mock impatience, "We thought you got lost in the human world." Derek rolled his eyes, taking his seat at the head of the table. "Let's get started." The meeting covered everything from patrol schedules to recent sightings of rogue wolves near their borders. Derek listened intently, his sharp mind analyzing every detail. He trusted his betas, but the final decisions always rested on his shoulders. "Rogues are getting bolder," Sarah said, her tone serious. "We need to double patrols near the eastern boundary." Derek nodded. "Agreed. But we can't stretch ourselves too thin." Lucas, coordinate with the patrol teams. Sarah, work on a rotation schedule. I want updates by tomorrow. The city of Silverwood had always been an anomaly. Nestled between sprawling forests and rolling hills, it was a place that balanced the charm of small-town life with the modern conveniences of a bustling urban center. The streets were lined with old brick buildings, their ivy-covered facades a testament to the city's rich history. Cobblestone paths wove through quaint neighborhoods, while sleek skyscrapers loomed in the distance, casting long shadows over the riverside market. But beneath its picturesque exterior, Silverwood held a secret. For centuries, it had been home to the Crescent Moon Pack, the only werewolf pack to ever claim the city as its territory. The Crescent Moon Pack had resided there for as long as anyone could remember, their presence woven into the fabric of Silverwood itself. They operated in the shadows, their existence unknown to the humans who lived beside them. For generations, the pack had maintained a delicate balance, protecting the city from threats that its human residents could never comprehend. And for many years the balance held. Silverwood was peaceful, its forests alive with the sounds of nature. The pack thrived, working together to ensure their home remained safe. Derek's father, the previous alpha, had been a firm but fair leader, and he'd passed those values on to Derek when it was time for him to take over. Under Derek's leadership, the Crescent Moon Pack had grown even stronger, their bond unshakable. But no place stayed untouched forever. The first signs of trouble began years ago, long before Derek became alpha. Strangers started appearing in the forests surrounding Silverwood, wolves who didn't belong to any pack, their eyes wild with desperation. They came in small numbers at first, lurking on the edges of Crescent Moon territory, testing the boundaries. These were the rogues, wolves who had either been cast out of their packs or had chosen a life of solitude. Some were harmless wanderers, searching for a place to belong. But others were dangerous, wolves who had abandoned the structure of pack life and embraced chaos. Derek had heard the stories as a child, tales of rogue wolves stirring up trouble in nearby towns. His father used to tell him, "A lone wolf is unpredictable. They have nothing to lose and everything to gain. Never let your guard down around one." For years, the Crescent Moon Pack had managed to keep the rogues at bay, their presence little more than a minor annoyance. But recently, the sightings had grown more frequent. Rogue wolves were venturing closer to the city, their boldness increasing with each passing day. Why Silverwood? There was something about Silverwood that drew them in. Maybe it was the dense forests that surrounded the city, offering perfect cover for wolves on the run. Or maybe it was the Crescent Moon Pack itself, a beacon of strength and stability in a world where most packs were scattered and divided. But Derek suspected it was something deeper. Silverwood had always been special, though no one could quite explain why. The forest had a life of its own, its energy pulsing through the trees like a heartbeat. Some said it was the land itself that called to them, a place where wolves felt a connection they couldn't find anywhere else. Whatever the reason, the rogues saw Silverwood as an opportunity, and that made them dangerous. As alpha, it was Derek's job to keep the peace. The pack patrolled the borders of their territory day and night, watching for any signs of trouble. They'd intercepted rogue wolves before, driving them back into the wilderness. But Derek knew it was only a matter of time before the rogues grew bold enough to challenge them directly. It wasn't just about protecting the pack, it was about protecting the city. The humans of Silverwood had no idea how close they lived to danger, and Derek intended to keep it that way. But even he couldn't ignore the growing tension. Something was shifting, a change in the air that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand on end. The rogues weren't just wandering anymore. They were gathering, organizing, preparing for something. And Derek couldn't shake the feeling that whatever it was tied to him, and to the pack he was sworn to protect. For now, Silverwood remained calm. The streets bustled with life, children laughing as they played in the park, couples strolling hand in hand along the riverbank. The humans went about their lives, blissfully unaware of the wolves who walked among them. But Derek knew that peace was fragile. All it would take was one rogue wolf to shatter the illusion. As he stood on the edge of the forest one evening, watching the city lights twinkle in the distance, Derek made a silent vow. Whatever the rogues were planning, whatever danger lay ahead, he would face it head-on. Silverwood was his home, his pack's home, and he would do whatever it took to keep it safe, even if it meant going to war. The meeting lasted over an hour, and by the end of it, Derek felt the familiar weight of leadership settling on his shoulders. But there was no time to dwell. Rugby practice was next. The rugby field was Derek's escape. It was the one place where he could let go, where he didn't have to think about pack politics or rogue threats. The team was a mix of humans and wolves, and while Derek kept his supernatural strength in check, he played with a level of intensity that left his teammates in awe. "Derek, heads up!" someone shouted as the ball sailed through the air. He caught it effortlessly, dodging two defenders before sprinting toward the goal line. The thrill of the game, the adrenaline coursing through his veins, it was a welcome distraction. But even as he scored the winning try, his mind wandered back to the pack house, to the responsibilities waiting for him. "You're on fire today," his teammate Ryan said, clapping him on the back. Derek gave a small smile. "Just needed to blow off some steam." Ryan laughed. "Whatever it is, keep it up. We need you at the next game." As the team wrapped up practice, Derek lingered on the field for a moment, looking up at the sky. The sun was beginning to set, casting a warm orange glow over the horizon. It reminded him of the long run he'd planned for the next morning, a chance to clear his head before another day of chaos. By the time Derek got back to his apartment, the day's events had taken their toll. He dropped his bag by the door and sank into the couch, letting out a deep breath. The silence was deafening, a stark contrast to the noise and activity that filled every other part of his life. He picked up his phone, scrolling through messages from pack members, professors, and teammates. But one message stood out, a simple text from James. "Don't think too much. You're allowed to take it easy once in a while." Derek shook his head, a faint smile tugging at his lips. James always knew when to remind him to slow down, even if Derek rarely listened. As the night wore on, Derek found himself restless. His thoughts drifted back to the pack meeting, to the rogue sightings, to the responsibilities that seemed to multiply by the day. But beneath all that, there was a lingering sense of anticipation, something he couldn't quite put into words. Maybe it was the weight of the full moon approaching, or maybe it was something else entirely. Either way, he knew he needed the run he'd planned for the next morning. It was the only way he could clear his mind and face whatever the next day had in store. Derek set his alarm for an early start, his thoughts already turning to the forest trails and the peace they always seemed to bring. For now, it was enough to focus on the rhythm of his breath, the quiet of the night, and the promise of a new day. During one of his early morning runs through the forest, Derek found himself on the outskirts of town. The air was crisp, carrying the faint smell of wet leaves and freshly baked bread from the nearby streets. He slowed his pace, catching sight of a small, unassuming coffee shop tucked between two old brick buildings. He hesitated for a moment before deciding to go in. It wasn't like him to stop during his runs, but something about the place drew him in. The bell above the door jingled as he stepped inside, and the warm aroma of coffee and cinnamon wrapped around him like a comforting blanket. The space was cozy, with worn wooden floors and mismatched chairs that gave it a charming lived-in feel. And that's when he saw her. She was sitting by the window, her long, curly brown hair catching the sunlight as it streamed through the glass. Her green eyes were focused on the street outside, but there was a distant look in them, as if her mind was miles away. Derek felt his heart skip a beat, a strange sensation for someone who prided himself on his control. Who is she? He thought, unable to tear his eyes away. She looked familiar, though he couldn't place how or why. It was like he'd seen her before, but only in a dream. He found a seat in the corner, telling himself it was just a coincidence that he picked a spot with a clear view of her. But the truth was, he couldn't look away. There was something about her that held him captive, something he couldn't explain. For the next hour, Derek sat there, his coffee growing cold as he watched her. She barely moved, lost in her own thoughts, and he found himself wondering what was on her mind. When she finally stood to leave, he felt an odd pang of disappointment. He didn't even know her name, yet he couldn't shake the feeling that he needed to see her again. Later that day, Derek told James about the encounter. "You're not going to believe this," Derek began, pacing the room with a restless energy James had rarely seen. James raised an eyebrow. "What? Did the big bad alpha find something he can't figure out?" Derek shot him a look but didn't deny it. "I saw someone this morning. At the coffee shop." James leaned back in his chair, folding his arms. "A someone, huh? Go on." Derek hesitated, running a hand through his hair. "It was different. I don't know how to explain it. It's like I've seen her before, but I haven't. And I can't stop thinking about her." James grinned. "I told you. One day you'd run into someone who turns your world upside down. And here we are." Derek sighed, shaking his head. "It's not like that. I don't even know her name." "So find out," James said, as if it were the simplest thing in the world. "Go back to the coffee shop. Talk to her. What's the worst that could happen?" Derek didn't answer, but the idea had already taken root in his mind. He couldn't shake the feeling that he needed to see her again. Over the next few days, Derek found himself returning to the coffee shop, always hoping to see her again. The third time he got lucky. She was there, sitting in the same spot by the window. This time, he noticed the faint shadows under her eyes, the way her shoulders slumped slightly as if carrying an invisible weight. He sat closer this time, his heart pounding as he tried to come up with a reason to talk to her. But he couldn't find the words. He just watched, waiting for the right moment. It was James who gave him the idea for the playful move. "Do something bold," James had said. "Something that'll make her notice you. You're the alpha, Derek." Like it. So the next morning, Derek went back to the coffee shop with a plan. He handed the waiter a note and a few bills, grinning as he explained what he wanted. A few moments later, the waiter approached her table with a fresh cup of coffee. She looked up in surprise. "I didn't order this," she said. The waiter gestured toward Derek. "It's from him." She turned to look at Derek, who raised his own cup in a silent toast. She hesitated, then smiled, a small, hesitant smile, but it was enough. Derek stood, walking over to her table. "Mind if I join you?" And just like that, everything began to change. Their paths didn't cross by accident after that. Derek found himself going to the coffee shop more often, and each time he hoped she'd be there. Sometimes she was, sometimes she wasn't, but every time he saw her, it felt like the world slowed down. They started sitting together more frequently, their conversations growing longer, deeper. She began to share small glimpses of her life, the loss she was trying to recover from, the family she missed, the sense of not quite belonging anywhere. And while Derek listened intently, his own internal conflict grew. Why did he feel so drawn to her? Why did it feel like he'd been waiting for her his entire life? He told James about her again, pacing the pack house with the same restless energy as before. "She's amazing," he admitted, running a hand through his hair. "But there's something I can't figure out. It's like I've known her forever, but I don't know why." James smirked, leaning against the doorframe. Sounds like you're in deep already. When's the wedding? Derek rolled his eyes. It's not like that. Right, James said, clearly unconvinced. So why do you keep going back? Derek didn't have an answer for that. But deep down he knew James was right. He couldn't stay away from her, even if he wanted to. And she started to feel the same pull. Despite her walls, despite the pain she was still carrying, she found herself looking forward to their talks, their laughter, the way he made her feel lighter, like she wasn't carrying the weight of the world alone anymore. But there was still so much unspoken between them. So much she wasn't ready to share. And Derek. He was starting to notice the shadows in her eyes, the hesitation in her voice. And why did he feel like her story was about to change his life forever? As their bond grew, so did the questions. For Derek, it wasn't just about her smile or her laugh anymore. It was about the way she seemed to carry a world of secrets on her shoulders. Secrets she wasn't ready to share. For her, it wasn't just about his humor or his warmth. It was about the way he seemed to understand her, even when she didn't say a word. But things were about to change. A new presence was about to enter their lives. Someone who would test their connection, challenge their trust, and force them to face truths neither of them were ready for. Because love isn't just about finding someone who makes you feel whole. It's about holding on when the world tries to pull you apart. And for Derek and her, the real battle was only just beginning. Chapter 2. Scene 1. Selena's struggles and shared vulnerabilities. You ever feel like life gives you more questions than answers? Selena's voice was soft, almost lost in the hum of the coffee shop around them. Her fingers traced absent patterns on her mug as she stared into the dark liquid. Derek leaned forward slightly. His usual confidence replaced with quiet curiosity. All the time, he admitted. But what's on your mind? Selena hesitated, her green eyes glancing toward the window as if searching for a way to escape the conversation. But something about Derek made her feel safe, like she could say things she hadn't told anyone else. I lost my parents when I was 14, she began, her voice trembling slightly. Derek didn't interrupt. He stayed silent, his expression softening as he waited for her to continue. We were driving back from a trip, just a normal family road trip. My dad was at the wheel, my mom was in the passenger seat, and I was in the back with my little brother. We were laughing about something silly. I don't even remember what it was anymore. And then, she paused, her hands tightening around the mug. And then the car swerved, she said, her voice breaking. My dad yelled something, but it was all so fast. We hit something, or maybe something hit us, I don't even know. All I remember is seeing this creature. Derek's brows furrowed. A creature. Selena nodded, her gaze distant. It looked like a wolf, but it wasn't normal. It was huge, and its eyes, they glowed. After that, everything went black. When I woke up, I was in the hospital. They told me I was the only survivor. Derek swallowed hard, his jaw tightening. He wanted to say something, anything, but he couldn't. Her words hit too close to home, stirring memories he wasn't ready to share. It's like, I should have been the one who didn't make it, Selena continued, tears welling in her eyes. Sometimes I wonder why I was spared. What made me so special? You were meant to survive, Derek said firmly, his voice steady. You're here for a reason, even if you don't know what it is yet. Selena looked at him, her expression conflicted. What about you? Have you ever lost someone? Derek hesitated, the question cutting deeper than he expected. Yeah, he said finally. My younger brother. Selena's eyes softened. I'm sorry. How did he die? Derek looked away, the memory like a shadow in his mind. It was a long time ago, he said, his voice quieter now. Let's just say it wasn't an accident. The way he avoided her gaze told her there was more to the story, but she didn't press. For now, the mystery lingered between them, unanswered but not forgotten. Despite the heavy conversation, Derek and Selena's connection grew stronger in the days that followed. They started spending more time together, grabbing coffee in the mornings, taking long walks through the forest trails, even sneaking off campus to watch sunsets from the hill overlooking Silverwood. One evening, Derek convinced Selena to join him for a movie night at the old theater downtown. The place was charmingly retro, with faded red seats and a flickering marquee that announced the double feature. You're going to love this, Derek said as they settled into their seats. Classic action and bad one-liners. What more could you want? Selena smirked. Maybe a plot that makes sense. Details, Derek teased, throwing a handful of popcorn in her direction. They laughed, the sound echoing softly in the near-empty theater. For a few hours it felt like nothing else mattered. No past, no secrets, just the joy of being together. After the movie, they walked out into the cool night air, their breath visible in the faint glow of the streetlights. The streets were quiet, the city's usual bustle replaced by an eerie stillness. They were halfway to Selena's aunt's house when it happened. A man stepped out from the shadows, a gun glinting in his hand. Wallets. Now, he barked, his voice sharp and demanding. Derek's body went rigid, his protective instincts kicking in. We don't want any trouble, he said calmly, raising his hands. But the man wasn't interested in peace. He grabbed Selena's arm, shoving her roughly to the ground. The sound of her yelp as she hit the pavement made something snap inside Derek. He felt it building, the heat, the fire, the primal rage he kept buried deep. His vision blurred, and when he opened his eyes again, they were glowing faintly, a golden hue that reflected his rising anger. Hey man, back off, the attacker stammered, taking a step back. Derek growled low, his voice almost inhuman, and in a flash he lunged. He didn't fully shift. He didn't have to. The strength in his semi-transformed state was enough to disarm the man and send him scrambling into the night. When it was over, Derek turned to Selena, his breathing heavy, his glowing eyes meeting her wide, terrified gaze. What was that?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Derek didn't answer. He couldn't. The next few days passed in a haze for Selena. Her thoughts were a whirlwind of confusion, fear, and curiosity. She avoided Derek entirely, replaying that night over and over in her mind. The glowing eyes, the low growl that rumbled deep in his chest. It was like something out of a movie. At first she tried to rationalize it. Maybe she'd imagined it. Maybe the fear of the attack had made her hallucinate. But the more she thought about it, the more she knew what she saw was real. And the need for answers consumed her. She started where most people would, internet searches. Late into the night she sat in her room, her laptop screen casting a pale glow on her face as she typed every variation of what she'd witnessed. Glowing eyes, man growling, supernatural strength, wolf-like humans. The results were, at first, disappointing. Articles about rare medical conditions, scientific explanations for glowing eyes in animals, and conspiracy theories filled her screen. She clicked on link after link, her frustration growing with every vague answer. But then she found a forum. It was tucked away in a dark corner of the internet, its design old and clunky, as if it hadn't been updated in years. The title read, Myths, Legends, and the Supernatural, Truth or Fiction. The threads were filled with strange stories, accounts of creatures that sounded eerily similar to what she'd seen. Wolves that walk like men exist, one post read. They blend in, living among us, hiding in plain sight. Look closely and you'll see the signs. Selena's heart raced as she scrolled through the comments. People described encounters with glowing eyes, inhuman strength, and strange howls in the night. One post stood out. They're not just legends. They're real and they're organized. Packs, leaders, territories. It's all there, hidden from the rest of us. She couldn't tear her eyes away from the screen. It sounded crazy, impossible, but it also felt like the closest thing to an answer she'd found. When the internet failed to provide solid answers, Selena turned to another source. The library. Silverwood's library was an old, towering building that smelled of aged paper and wood polish. The librarian, a kind but sharp-eyed woman named Mrs. Hargrove, raised an eyebrow as Selena approached the counter. "Anything specific you're looking for, dear?" Mrs. Hargrove asked. Selena hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. "I'm interested in myths and folklore. Maybe something about wolves." Mrs. Hargrove nodded slowly, her eyes narrowing slightly. "Wolves, you say? We've got a collection of books on local legends. Silverwood has its share of strange tales." She led Selena to a quiet corner of the library, where dusty tomes and faded journals lined the shelves. Selena's fingers brushed over the spines, pulling out anything that seemed remotely relevant. She spent hours poring over the pages, her fingers smudged with ink and her mind racing with connections she hadn't made before. The legend spoke of wolves with human-like intelligence, of secret societies that protected or hunted them. One story in particular caught her attention. It was an old Silverwood tale about a pack that once lived in the area, protecting the land from dark forces. The book didn't explain what the dark forces were, but the imagery of glowing eyes and fierce battles sent shivers down her spine. Selena didn't stop there. She started paying attention to the people around her, picking up on conversations that seemed out of place. At the coffee shop, she overheard two older men talking about a strange howl they'd heard in the woods late at night. "Could have sworn it wasn't just a regular wolf," one of them said, shaking his head. Selena's ears perked up. "What do you mean?" she asked, trying to sound casual. The man looked at her, his eyes narrowing slightly. "Just saying. Sounded different. Like it was calling to something." Another clue. She even ventured into a small antique shop near the edge of town, drawn in by a collection of old charms and talismans displayed in the window. The shopkeeper, a wiry man with deep-set eyes, watched her closely as she examined a necklace with a wolf's head pendant. "People say wolves are guardians," he said suddenly, his voice low. "But not all of them. Some are dangerous." Selena glanced up at him. "Dangerous how?" He shrugged, his lips curling into a faint, knowing smile. "Depends on the wolf." Each new piece of information added to the puzzle, but it also brought more questions. Who was Derek really? What was he hiding? And why did everything seem to point back to her? She barely slept, her mind too restless. Every creak of the old house, every rustle of wind outside her window made her sit up, her heart pounding. She started to feel like she was being watched, Not by Derek, but by something else. And then there was the dream. It came to her in fragments, like a half-remembered memory. She was back in the car with her family, the laughter and warmth filling the space. Then the crash, the chaos of metal twisting and glass shattering. But this time in the dream she saw more. The wolf-like creature wasn't just a blur. It was standing over her, its glowing eyes locked onto hers, as if it were deciding something. And then she woke up, drenched in sweat, the memory seared into her mind. Selena couldn't avoid Derek forever. She needed answers, and she needed them now. Her research had only deepened the mystery, and the growing tension in her chest was unbearable. Taking a deep breath, she grabbed her jacket and headed out into the night. Selena showed up at Derek's house unannounced, her expression a mix of fear and determination. "We need to talk," she said firmly. Derek sighed, stepping aside to let her in. He'd known this was coming. "Tell me the truth," Selena demanded. "What are you? What did I see that night?" Derek hesitated, running a hand through his hair. "You wouldn't believe me if I told you." "Try me," she shot back. So he did. He told her everything, about the Crescent Moon Pack, about the existence of werewolves, and about the rogues who had killed his brother. "And me?" Selena asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "What does this have to do with me?" Derek looked at her, his expression unreadable. "I think you might be one of us. You just haven't awakened your wolf side yet." Selena stared at him, her mind reeling. "That's what my parents were hiding, isn't it?" Derek nodded. "Probably. And I can help you figure it out. But you need to see something first." He took her to the pack house that night, introducing her to his pack. For the first time, Selena saw the world she was meant to be part of, a world that both terrified and intrigued her. Selena sat on the edge of her bed, staring at her hands. The faint ache from her training with Lucien was a reminder of how far she'd come in such a short time. She felt stronger, more in control, yet something nagged at her. Derek's reaction. Why was he so against her training with Lucien? He'd barely said anything directly, but she could feel his disapproval every time she mentioned it. Didn't make sense. Lucien was helping her. He was patient, encouraging, and pushing her to discover a part of herself she didn't even know existed. But Derek, he seemed almost protective. Too protective. She sighed, her mind flashing back to earlier that day when Lucien had praised her progress. "You're picking this up faster than I expected," Lucien had said, his blue eyes gleaming with approval. "You've got natural instincts. They just needed the right guidance." His words had felt genuine, and Selena had appreciated his encouragement. But Derek's cold reaction later that evening had cast a shadow over her confidence. What was it about Lucien that made Derek so uneasy? Lucien's place in the pack had always been complicated. He wasn't just another beta. He was one of the strongest fighters Derek had. But strength alone wasn't enough to earn trust. Years ago, before Derek became alpha, Lucien had made a mistake that nearly cost the pack everything. He'd been tasked with guarding a critical part of their territory during a negotiation with another pack. But instead of holding his ground, Lucien had struck a deal with a rogue faction, believing he could outsmart them and gain more leverage for the pack. The plan backfired spectacularly. The rogues betrayed him, launching an attack that left several pack members injured and one dead. Derek's father, the alpha at the time, had been furious. Lucien could have been exiled or worse. But Derek's father believed in second chances. He allowed Lucien to stay, on the condition that he prove his loyalty and accept constant scrutiny. And he had for the most part. Lucien worked harder than anyone else, throwing himself into his duties and earning back some level of trust. But there were still whispers, doubts that never quite faded. Derek had always kept an eye on him, never fully forgetting the betrayal. And now, with Lucien taking such a keen interest in Selena, those old doubts were surfacing again. Deep in the forest, far from the crescent moon pack's borders, a small group of wolves sat around a fire. Their human forms cast flickering shadows on the trees as they spoke in hushed tones. "She's in Silverwood," one of them said, his voice low but sharp. The leader, a broad-shouldered man with piercing amber eyes, nodded slowly. "No. The question is how we approach this." "She doesn't know who she is," another wolf added, glancing nervously at the leader. "She's unawakened." "That won't last," the leader replied, his tone laced with certainty. "And when the time comes, she'll either be with us, or against us." The wolves exchanged tense glances, the firelight reflecting their unease. "And Derek?" someone asked hesitantly. The leader's expression darkened. "Leave him to me. He's not the problem right now. She is." The forest was eerily quiet as Derek patrolled the border that night. The moon hung high in the sky, casting silver beams through the dense canopy of trees. He'd sensed something off all evening, and now his instincts were on high alert. Then he saw them. A group of wolves in human form stepped out from the shadows, their eyes glinting in the moonlight. Derek counted 4 of them, their postures tense but calculated. "You're trespassing," Derek said, his voice steady and authoritative. One of the rogues smirked, taking a step forward. "We're just passing through, Alpha. No need to get territorial." Derek's eyes narrowed. His muscles coiled like a spring. He could feel the tension in the air, the barely contained aggression that crackled like static between them. What was going to happen next? Chapter 3. Far beyond Silverwood, in the shadowy depths of the forest where sunlight rarely broke through the canopy, Kane's pack gathered. Their base was a far cry from the structured order of Derek's packhouse. Broken trees and jagged rocks surrounded their encampment, and the air carried the faint stench of decay. Kane stood at the center of a circle, his piercing amber eyes scanning the faces of his wolves. His presence was magnetic, but it wasn't just respect that kept them loyal, it was fear. "Do you know why you're here?" Kane's voice was cold, slicing through the air like a blade. The wolves shifted uneasily, some nodding, others avoiding his gaze. "She's in Silverwood," Kane continued, pacing slowly. "The girl we've been searching for. The last link to the bloodline that betrayed us. Her parents thought they could hide her, but nothing stays hidden forever." The mention of betrayal sent a ripple of tension through the pack. Whispers of the past, of deals broken and alliances shattered, were part of their lore. Kane stopped, his gaze locking on a younger wolf. "Do you understand what this means?" The wolf hesitated. She doesn't know who she is. If she did, she wouldn't be there." Kane's lips curled into a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Exactly. She's unawakened, vulnerable. But that won't last. And when she realizes what she is, where do you think her loyalties will lie? With us? Or with him?" The wolves exchanged glances, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. We'll make her remember, Cain said, his voice growing darker. Her blood carries our mark. And if she resists, we remind her who she belongs to. A low growl rumbled through the circle, the wolves stirred by their alpha's words. What about Derek? One of the older wolves asked, his tone cautious. Cain's eyes flickered with anger. Derek is nothing. His pack is nothing. They've grown complacent, too used to peace. It's time they learned the cost of underestimating us. He turned to face the group fully, his voice rising with authority. Silverwood belongs to us now, and we'll take it, one piece at a time. Back in Silverwood, the atmosphere was far different. The Crescent Moon Pack was on high alert. Derek's instincts had been nagging at him for weeks, and now, with the reports of rogue sightings increasing, there was no room for complacency. The pack house was buzzing with activity as Derek's betas gathered around the large table in the main hall. Maps of their territory were spread out, marked with points of interest and recent sightings. Lucas, ever the strategist, leaned over the map with a furrowed brow. If they're planning an attack, they'll strike here. He pointed to the eastern border, where the forest thinned and the terrain was harder to defend. Sarah the enforcer nodded. Agreed. We've had sightings near that area for days. It's too coincidental to ignore. Derek stood at the head of the table, his arms crossed, listening intently. His presence commanded respect, but there was a tension in his posture, a weight that only he could feel. We double patrols on the eastern border, Derek said firmly. Lucas, coordinate with the scouts. Sarah, I need you to lead a team to reinforce the weaker points. No one goes out alone. As his betas nodded and moved to carry out his orders, Derek's thoughts drifted to Selena. He found her outside, sitting on the porch steps with her arms wrapped around her knees. She looked out at the forest, her expression distant. You've been quiet, Derek said as he approached. Selena glanced at him, her lips curving into a faint, tired smile. Just trying to process everything. It's a lot, you know. Derek nodded, sitting beside her. Yeah, I know. She hesitated before speaking again. Do you think they're connected to my parents? The rogues, I mean. Derek's jaw tightened. It's possible. Cain has a reputation for holding grudges. If your parents left his pack, he wouldn't have taken it lightly. Selena's hands clenched into fists. My parents left for a reason. They wanted to keep us safe away from all this. Why can't he just let it go? Derek didn't have an answer, but he placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Whatever happens, we'll deal with it. Together. Selena looked at him, her eyes searching his face for reassurance. And for the first time she felt a flicker of hope. The evening was quiet, a calm that seemed to blanket Silverwood after the tense hours of preparation. Derek had been busy all day, rallying his pack and ensuring every detail of their defenses was in place. Selena had spent most of that time observing, trying to learn, and fighting off the growing weight of uncertainty that clung to her. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Derek found her sitting on the wooden swing in the backyard of the pack house. The swing creaked gently as she rocked back and forth, her arms wrapped around herself to ward off the evening chill. Derek hesitated for a moment, watching her from a distance. The golden light of the setting sun caught in her hair, making it glow like burnished copper. There was a quiet vulnerability about her that made his chest ache, but there was strength too, a kind of resilience he admired more than he could put into words. He cleared his throat softly as he approached, not wanting to startle her. "Mind if I join you?" Selena looked up, her green eyes meeting his. For a moment she just stared, her lips curving into the faintest of smiles. "It's your swing." Derek smirked, sitting beside her. "It's just a swing," he said lightly. "But I think it looks better with you on it." Selena's smile grew, though she shook her head at him. "Do you always say things like that?" "Only when I mean them," Derek replied, his tone softening. They sat in silence for a while, the quiet hum of the forest surrounding them. The night sky above was beginning to fill with stars, their faint light peeking through the canopy of trees. The air smelled of pine and earth, grounding yet oddly soothing. "Do you ever wonder what it's all for?" Selena asked suddenly, her voice barely above a whisper. "All the running, the fighting, the protecting. What's the point?" Derek tilted his head, considering her words. "It's different for everyone," he said after a moment. "For me it's about the pack. Keeping them safe, giving them a place to call home. But for you, I think you're still figuring it out." Selena nodded, her fingers absent-mindedly tracing the grain of the wooden swing. "I feel like I've been running from one thing to another my whole life, never stopping long enough to figure out where I'm going." "Maybe you don't have to know yet," Derek said gently. "Maybe it's okay to just be." She looked at him then, really looked at him, her eyes searching his face. "Do you ever just stop? Just be like you said?" Derek chuckled softly, leaning back against the swing. "Not often. But I'm trying." "And how's that going?" Selena teased, her tone lighter now. He glanced at her, his eyes soft but intense. "Better since you've been around." Selena's breath caught in her throat, and she looked away quickly, her cheeks flushing. "You don't mean that." "I do," Derek said firmly. He reached out, gently brushing a strand of hair from her face. His fingers lingered for a moment, the touch sending a shiver down her spine. "You've been through hell, and yet here you are. That's strength, Selena. And it's something I admire." Selena swallowed hard, her heart pounding in her chest. She didn't know what to say, so she said the only thing she could. "You don't even know me." "I know enough," Derek replied, his voice barely above a whisper now. "I know that you're brave, even when you're scared. I know you care deeply, even when you try not to show it. And I know that you've made me think about things I haven't thought about in years." Selena's eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them away quickly. "You make it sound like I'm something special." "You are," Derek said simply. The words hung between them, heavy with meaning. Selena looked up at him, her green eyes shimmering in the dim light. For a moment, it felt like the rest of the world faded away. No pack, no threats, no past. Just the two of them. Derek leaned in slowly, his gaze dropping to her lips. He paused, giving her a chance to pull away, but she didn't. Her breath hitched, and she closed the gap between them, an unspoken hunger and emotion in a soft, tentative kiss. Selena's hands found their way to his almost hesitant, her fingers curling into the fabric of his shirt, while Derek's arms wrapped around her, pulling her closer. When they finally broke apart, both of them were breathless. Selena looked up at Derek, her cheeks flushed, and for the first time in a long time she felt alive. "Was that okay?" Derek asked softly, his forehead resting against hers. Selena laughed, a soft melodic sound that made his heart skip a beat. "Yeah," she whispered. "More than okay." They stayed like that for a while, wrapped in each other's arms, the swing swaying gently beneath them. For once, the chaos of their lives felt far away, and all that mattered was the quiet moment they shared. The market hummed with its usual energy, vendors shouting their prices, children darting between stalls, and the tantalizing smell of fresh pastries filling the air. Selena walked beside Derek, her steps lightened by the rare sense of normalcy. She'd grown comfortable in his presence, and for a moment, she allowed herself to forget the whirlwind of emotions and questions that had consumed her over the past few days. But Derek's mood shifted abruptly. His easy stride slowed, his body stiffened, and his eyes scanned the crowd with sharp precision. Selena noticed the change immediately. "What's wrong?" she asked, her voice hushed but insistent. Derek didn't answer immediately, his gaze locking onto a figure at the far edge of the market. The man was leaning casually against a lamppost, but there was nothing casual about the way he watched them. Tall and broad-shouldered, the man exuded menace. His dark hair framed sharp, angular features, and his amber eyes gleamed with unsettling intensity. A slow, mocking smirk tugged at his lips as he straightened and began walking toward them. Derek moved instinctively, stepping closer to Selena, his body a shield. "Stay behind me," he said, his voice low and firm. The man stopped a few feet away, his smirk widening. "Derek," he said, his voice smooth but laced with malice. "It's been a long time." "Not long enough, Kane," Derek growled, his tone like ice. Selena's heart raced at the tension crackling between them. She looked between the two men, confusion swirling in her mind. "Who is he?" she whispered to Derek. Kane's amber eyes shifted to her, his smirk turning predatory. "She doesn't know who I am. You didn't tell her." He chuckled darkly, shaking his head. "How very typical of you, Derek. Always keeping secrets." "Leave her out of this," Derek said, his voice sharp, his fists clenched at his sides. Kane's smirk widened as he took a step closer. "Oh, I can't do that. She's part of this, whether she likes it or not." His gaze lingered on Selena, sending a chill down her spine. "Do you even know who you are, little wolf?" Selena's breath caught in her throat. "What are you talking about?" Kane tilted his head, feigning surprise. "She really doesn't know. Fascinating. Let me enlighten you then." He took another step forward, ignoring Derek's warning glare. "You're one of us. From my pack. Your parents thought they could run, but destiny has a funny way of bringing things full circle." "That's not true," Selena said, her voice trembling. "Oh, it's true," Kane replied, his tone cold. "Your family betrayed me, betrayed us. And now you're here, standing beside him." He spat the last word as if it were poison. "Out of all the places you could have ended up, you land in Derek's lap. How poetic." Derek growled low in his throat, stepping forward until he was toe-to-toe with Kane. "She's not going anywhere with you. If you want to come for her, you'll have to go through me." Kane's smirk didn't falter. "Oh, I intend to, Derek. But not yet. This is just a friendly warning." He turned his attention back to Selena. "You have a choice, little wolf. Come willingly and we'll show mercy. Stay and you'll pay for the sins of your parents. Either way, you're coming home." Selena's heart pounded in her chest. "Why now? After all this time?" Kane's expression darkened, his amber eyes burning with fury. "Because your bloodline carries a debt. A debt that must be paid. And if she refuses? Derek asked, his voice dangerously calm. Cain smirked, his teeth gleaming. Then she'll suffer. And so will you. The threat hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. Cain stepped back, his gaze lingering on Selena one last time. Enjoy the calm while it lasts. We'll be back. With that, he turned and disappeared into the crowd, leaving an unsettling silence in his wake. Selena turned to Derek, her voice trembling. What did he mean? What does he want with me? Derek exhaled slowly, his fists still clenched. Cain is the alpha of a rival pack. We have history, bad history. But this is personal. Why didn't you tell me about him? She asked, her tone edged with frustration and fear. I didn't think it would come to this, Derek admitted, his voice low. Cain's pack has always been a problem, but he's never crossed into our territory before. Not like this. Selena's mind swirled with questions, but one loomed larger than the rest. Am I really part of his pack? Derek hesitated, his jaw tightening. Your parents left that life behind to protect you. Whatever Cain says, you don't belong to him. Not now, not ever. But what if he's right? Selena whispered, her voice cracking. Derek stepped closer, his eyes softening as he placed a hand on her shoulder. He's not. You're not alone in this, Selena. We'll figure it out together. Selena wanted to believe him, but the weight of Cain's words lingered in the back of her mind. What had her parents done to provoke him? And how could she escape a past she didn't even remember? What happens next? The question burned in her thoughts as the market seemed to close in around her. The storm Cain promised felt closer than ever. Chapter 5. The forest was eerily quiet, the kind of silence that signaled something terrible was about to happen. The moon hung high above, its silver light casting long shadows through the dense trees. Derek stood at the center of his pack, his gaze scanning the line of wolves that surrounded him. His heart pounded, but his face remained calm, determined. Selena stood a few steps behind him, her breath coming in shallow bursts. She hadn't missed the way Derek's pack moved, focused, disciplined, ready to lay down their lives if needed. But she also saw the worry etched in their faces. They were outnumbered, and Cain's wolves weren't just a threat, they were ruthless. From the darkness, a single figure emerged. He walked with a casual confidence, his amber eyes glowing faintly in the moonlight. Behind him, his wolves followed, their forms shifting restlessly as they prepared for the fight. Well, Derek, Cain said, his voice dripping with mockery. I didn't think you'd actually show up. I almost hoped you'd run. You know better than that, Derek replied coldly. You wanted a fight, Cain. You've got one. But if you think you're taking her, you're wrong. Cain's gaze shifted to Selena, and he smirked. Still playing the hero, I see. But heroes fall, Derek. Tonight you'll see that for yourself. Derek didn't wait for Cain to make the first move. He lunged, his body shifting midair as his wolf form took over. His pack followed suit, their howls piercing the night as they charged forward. The clash was immediate and brutal. Wolves collided in a flurry of teeth and claws, the sounds of snarls and yelps echoing through the forest. Selena watched in horror, frozen as the battle raged around her. Derek tore through his opponents with precision, his focus solely on Cain. The two alphas circled each other, their movements fluid and deadly. You're out of your league, Derek, Kane sneered, dodging a swipe. Funny, Derek growled. I was about to say the same thing to you. Their fight was fierce, each blow shaking the ground beneath them. But even as Derek held his ground, he couldn't be everywhere at once. He caught sight of one of his pack members, Lucas, being overwhelmed by two of Kane's wolves. Without hesitation, Derek charged toward them, throwing himself into the fray. Lucas stumbled away, bloodied but alive, as Derek took the brunt of the attack. A sharp yelp escaped him as claws tore into his side, and Selena's heart stopped. Derek, she screamed, but he didn't falter. He pushed through the pain, driving the wolves back before collapsing to the ground. His breathing labored. Selena's body trembled as she stared at Derek, his blood staining the forest floor. The world seemed to slow, the sounds of the battle fading into the background. She couldn't move. She couldn't think. All she could see was Derek, fighting for her, bleeding for her. A deep, primal rage began to build inside her. It started as a flicker, a heat in her chest, but quickly grew, consuming her entirely. Her heart pounded, her vision blurred, and she fell to her knees, clutching her head as an unfamiliar energy coursed through her veins. It was as if something inside her had been waiting for this moment, and now it refused to be contained. Selena screamed, the sound echoing through the forest, and her body began to shift. Her skin rippled, her bones cracked, and a wave of heat surged through her as her wolf finally awakened. When she stood, her form was different, sleek, powerful, and glowing faintly under the moonlight. Her green eyes burned with intensity as she turned toward Kane's wolves, a low growl rumbling in her throat. Without hesitation, Selena charged into the fray, her movements instinctual and precise. She tore through the enemy wolves with a strength she didn't know she had, her focus singular: protect Derek. Kane noticed the shift immediately, his smug confidence faltering as he watched her fight. So the little wolf finally woke up, he muttered, his tone laced with disdain. Selena reached Derek's side, standing protectively over him as Kane approached. Stay away from him, she snarled, her voice low and dangerous. Kane laughed, but there was an edge of uncertainty in his tone. You're impressive, I'll give you that. But it won't be enough. The battle raged on around them, but Selena didn't waver. She fought with everything she had, matching Kane blow for blow, her instincts driving her every move. Derek, despite his injuries, watched in awe as Selena held her ground. And then, with a final devastating strike, Selena sent Kane sprawling to the ground. He staggered to his feet, snarling, but his pack had already begun to retreat. This isn't over, Kane spat, his amber eyes blazing with fury. Yes, it is, Selena growled. Stay out of our territory, or next time you won't walk away. Kane hesitated for a moment, then turned and disappeared into the shadows, his wolves following close behind. The aftermath of the battle was quiet, the forest eerily still as Derek's pack regrouped. Selena knelt beside Derek, her wolf form fading as she returned to her human self. Her hands trembled as she pressed them to his wound, tears streaming down her face. You're going to be okay, she whispered, her voice cracking. You have to be. Derek smiled faintly, his eyes heavy with exhaustion. You were incredible, he murmured. Don't you dare compliment me right now, Selena said, half sobbing, half laughing. You scared me, Derek. I'm sorry, he said softly. But you did it, Selena. You found your strength. Later, back at the pack house, Derek lay on the couch, his wounds bandaged. Selena sat beside him, her hand resting lightly on his. Selena, Derek began, his voice low but steady. I need to tell you something. She looked at him, her heart pounding. I love you, he said simply. I've been falling for you since the day I met you, and I'm done pretending I don't feel it. Tears filled Selena's eyes, but this time they were tears of joy. I love you too, Derek, she whispered. I was just too scared to say it. They leaned into each other, their foreheads touching as the weight of the world seemed to lift, if only for a moment. Later that night, under the full moon, Derek and Selena stood together in the forest, their bond stronger than ever. The packs celebrated nearby, their laughter and howls echoing through the trees. Derek looked at Selena, his eyes filled with warmth. This is just the beginning, you know. She smiled, her hand tightening in his. No. But whatever comes next, we'll face it together. As the moonlight bathed them, the forest seemed to hum with energy, a reminder that peace was fleeting for those who walked with wolves. And somewhere in the shadows, a new threat was beginning to stir. And so, under the light of the full moon, Derek and Selena's journey finds its moment of peace. But as they know all too well, peace is fleeting for those who walk with wolves. What challenges lie ahead? Only time will tell. Thank you so much for joining us on this unforgettable journey with Derek and Selena in the Alpha's Desire. We hope you felt every moment of their struggles, triumphs, and the love that grew in the face of overwhelming odds. What would you do if fate tested your heart? If you were in Selena's shoes, would you stay and fight or run and hide? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. This story may have reached its conclusion, but Derek and Selena's journey is far from over. With new threats lurking in the shadows and the bonds of the pack growing stronger, their next chapter promises even more danger, passion, and discovery. Will their love be enough to overcome what's coming? Stay tuned, because the next chapter is just beginning. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Hit that notification bell so you never miss an update. We have so much more to share with you.